Hello, and hope you're all well. You'll have noticed that this weekend, with the VE Day celebrations, marks the 75th anniversary of the end of the Second World War. This date is just a month after the date that marks the liberation of Bergen-Belsen. I was actually supposed to be at a commemorative event there in April, which unfortunately has been cancelled. A poignant moment, 75 years receding into the distance after the end of one of the greatest atrocities known to humankind. It creates an opportunity, an obligation perhaps, to devote a few moments of reflection to the sacrifice of so many and the bravery of so many more to ensure our liberties, as Jews specifically, but for all citizens of the free world. And to celebrate and commemorate the end of the hostilities and the beginning of a new era, things that happened in my parents' lifetime and perhaps in the lifetime of many of those who are listening to this. So do consider tuning into our evening event for the shul to mark the occasion, joining the 11 a.m. moment of silence on Friday, the 3 p.m. what we would call a l'chaim, although you will have to wait till after Shabbat to listen to the Queen. Now this week's parasha, Emor, provides the first major compilation of the festivals. They are described as moadim. Now the word moed comes from the Hebrew word aid, which means testimony. It is a means of bearing witness to God through a specific use of time on a particular day. We have different words for festivals. Yom Tov, that's a later word. We have Chag that appears in the Torah, but this is moed, seeing festivals as an opportunity to commune with the divine through certain activities that testify to the relationship between man and God in time. Human beings are to declare them, we have control over them. It's a fascinating idea that while Shabbos is what the rabbis called kavir v'kayim, kaimo, it's fixed every 7 days whether you're there or not, whether you do it or not. The festivals are declared by the Jewish people who determine when the months will begin, when the years will begin, when years will be intercalated to ensure that the festivals align with the seasons. They all speak, as do every aspect of this, including the counting of the Omer, which is mentioned in this passage, about the importance of mastery over time. Time is God's greatest gift. And it starts with the Exodus. HaChodesh Hazel Ochem Rosh Chodoshim, in the 12th chapter of Shemos, God announces the freedom of the Jewish people by saying, this will be your calendar, you will control the calendar, this month and this one will be the first of your calendrical months. And it kind of makes sense that every festival is called Zeichel Yetzias Mitzrayim, a recollection of the Exodus, even if it has no direct relationship to the Exodus, because every festival only exists because of the freedom to master time that God invested in the Jewish people prior to the Exodus. Also helps us to understand why it is that although the text has announced Moadim, here's the list of festivals, and you'd expect Pesach to be first, Pesach is actually second. The first is Shabbos, and Shabbos has appeared on several other occasions, and you would not necessarily expect it to be referred to as a Moed. Now, I think, since festivals, as I've cast them, are about mastery of time, Shabbos has to come first. Shabbos is about the opportunity to understand the value of time, to use time properly, and to perhaps juxtapose the use of time with the use of space. This idea is beautifully, masterfully explicated by Rabbi Professor A.J. Heschel in his book, 1951 book, The Sabbath, now written almost 70 years ago. And I'd like to read a little bit from the opening sequence, a section called Architecture of Time. It just gives a flavour of the book, which I highly recommend. Technical civilization is man's conquest of space. It is a triumph frequently achieved by sacrificing an essential ingredient of existence, namely time. In technical civilization, we expend time to gain space. To enhance our power in the world of space is our main objective. Yet to have more does not mean to be more. The power we attain in the world of space terminates abruptly at the borderline of time. But time is the heart of existence. We are all infatuated with the splendour of space, with the grandeur of things of space. Thing is a category that lies heavily on our minds, tyrannising all our thoughts. Our imagination tends to mould all concepts in its image. In our daily lives, we attend primarily to that which the senses are spelling out for us, to what the eyes perceive, to what the fingers touch. Reality to us is thinghood, consisting of substances that occupy space. Even God is conceived by most of us as a thing. Indeed, we know what to do with space, but do not know what to do about time, except to make it subservient to space. Most of us seem to labour for the sake of things of space. As a result, we suffer from a deeply rooted dread of time and stand aghast when compelled to look into its face. Just a little more. The Bible is more concerned with time than with space. It sees the world in the dimension of time. It pays more attention to generations, to events, than to countries, to things. It is more concerned with history than with geography. To understand the teaching of the Bible, one must accept its premise that time has a meaning for life, which is at least equal to that of space, that time has a significance and sovereignty of its own. And unsurprisingly, Heschel then devotes the rest of this small book to explaining that the Sabbath is to celebrate time rather than space, to alleviate what he repeatedly recalls the tyranny of things of space, to become attuned on the Sabbath to holiness in time, to share in that which is eternal, from the world of creation to the creation of the world, as he puts it, to understand that we create meaning in the world, not primarily through space, but through the sanctification of time. I found this extraordinarily powerful, and it brings me back to an interview I did for the JC a couple of weeks ago, when I suggested that during the lockdown, when people are deprived of their normal routine, their normal spaces, their normal places of work, of prayer, we're missing our beloved shul very much, days blur into one, and that becomes very frustrating. And the return to some kind of Shabbos observance is a way to recognise the passage of days, weeks, to mark time in a meaningful way, to regain our mastery over time, which in many ways is more important still than our mastery of space, as Heschel so eloquently says. And that perhaps is why Shabbos is at the list, right at the top of the list of the festivals, because we first must define the nature of Moed, the nature of the sanctity of time. It's about recognising that space is a means while time is the end, and once that is done, it's possible to list the rest of the festivals. I think this is poignant now, because a meaningful sense of time has possibly become the casualty. As I said, the greatest gift of time sometimes is not that easy to access at the moment. All of us, I would suspect, and certainly I, had all kinds of resolutions, expectations of what we could achieve during what we imagined would be just a few weeks of lockdown. I've achieved some of those, not others, and some clearly are never going to happen. I suspect this experience is quite universal. And time is slipping past at an alarming rate. That means for me that Shabbos, perhaps more than in normal times, allows us to contextualise our time, understand that time is slipping away, whether it's during this lockdown period where we can achieve things and that we couldn't achieve otherwise, and have to refrain from things that we would normally do. But life itself is limited. And to experience Shabbos and the notion of time in what I would call a Heschel type way. Heschel refers to Shabbos as a palace in time and exhorts us to master what he calls the art of painting on the canvas of time, the mystical grandeur of the climax of creation. It's an extraordinary opportunity, one that we can actually achieve every Shabbos. I wish you a good Shabbos, a meaningful VE day, and sei gesund und stark.